Woo, it's Friday. Here we are, ready for another flag. Cannot believe we are on 42. That's just slipped off there. Let's glue it back on. 42. 10 more to go to the end of the year. Can you believe it? And we're still going. So I thought we'd do a stitch this week. Natural stitch. It's one that I learnt at summer school last year, and it's a raised chain stitch. So we have to lay down a foundation stitch first. So to start off with, we need parallel lines. So I'm doing it on a piece of it's like a bit like a, it's not wool blanket, tweed, like a plain tweed. So what we're going to need are 2 lines. So I've got my little chalk. So I'm going to do myself 2 lines about a centimetre apart, coming down. And what we need to do is choose one colour thread. So I'm going with a Perlé grey, and what I need to do is create myself a foundation stitch of parallel lines. So going across, they're about half a centimetre maybe apart. So straight across and then diagonal. Straight across, diagonal underneath. I was going to initially do this in a hoop, but I thought if I just used a slightly sturdier fabric it would work. So I'm hoping it will. I haven't done this since summer school 2 years ago, so I'm hoping I can remember what I'm doing. I quite like different types of stitches that you do where there's like a foundation stitch, or there's already a stitch there and then you do something to it. Now again, like I've always said, a bit like a broken record, this will work differently with different types of thread, different thicknesses of thread. That's really hard to say without it turning into a fur. Thicknesses of thread. I feel like you should go to elocution lessons to speak properly. Okay. So this will, I'm doing this stitch this wide, hopefully, so it'll be easier for everybody to see. I'm going to put my studio light on. I thought my little light would be okay, but there we go. It's just every so often it's really bizarre. It keeps raining, but it's like it goes to night time. Yeah, it's only, I'm filming this at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, but it's that proper Yorkshire saying, and ooh, the nights are drawing in. It's probably not just a Yorkshire saying, I bet a lot of people say it, but I just think it's a Yorkshire thing. Oh, the nights are drawing in. Can you believe it? I suppose for some of you they're not, which is even more random. You might be heading into summer as we're heading into winter. Right, so tie that off at the back and get myself into a knot. Right, so I'm going to do this slowly because it's another one of those ones where it's that starting off that is a little bit tricky. Okay, so what we're going to do then is take a different coloured thread. So I've gone for a dark blue because I know a few people have said with a few of my videos they'd like a more contrasting thread. Okay, so what we are going to do, I've drawn myself a little plan so that I can remember what I'm doing, because sometimes it's not that straightforward. So what we're going to do is you're going to come up at the top. So I've come up here, might do it to one side. No, we'll go in the middle for the first one. So I'm coming up at the top, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to go underneath that thread. So I've not gone through it, I've just gone underneath the thread and then I've taken it through to the back. Okay, So now we're ready to do our chain stitch. So it is a chain stitch, but you're not stitching through the fabric. You don't want to go through the fabric at all doing this. So your chain stitch, we're going to you're going to come through there and then over the top, and that's going to create your chain. Okay, so I've gone round there. This is just to get me started, so my threads come out at the top. Create your chain, go underneath there, so you're just going through one of the little bars. You're going to create a chain around that. Okay, so can you see there's my chain? So there's my chain. So what I do, I need to then bring my thread back to the top. So on the next one, I'll bring this down. There we go. So I've just made my chain. So I'm going to come underneath that little bar there to bring my thread, oops, back to the top. Then I'm coming in from the other side, underneath there. Make sure that goes underneath, because that's going to create my chain. Right through. There we go, and there's my chain. So I'll do the same thing again. I'll try and turn it round, see whether or not it's a bit easier to see. So I'm going underneath the next one down, so that, oops, without going through. Might be easier to do this with a blunt needle. So you're always starting your stitch where you've done a little loop round there, so your thread's at the top. Make a loop going downwards, and then that needle comes under the other side and over the top of that, and then you make another little chain. Go under the next one, so that you're bringing your thread up to the top, thread up to the top of your stitch, other side, underneath, and then over the top of your leading thread. Go underneath. Probably will be easier doing this with a blunt needle. Then come in from the other side and make sure that that thread goes underneath your needle. You can see I'm making my chains. I'll do it a bit closer. Okay, so I need to bring my thread, so I'm going around this next bar here, needle underneath, and that brings your thread to the other side of your stitch. Make a loop, other side, underneath there, over the top of your thread. You don't want to pull it too tight, you want to create these really nice little chains. So needle to the top, back in through the other side, underneath, and remember you're not going through your fabric at all. These chains, that's why it's called a raised one, because it's on the surface. So bring your needle to the top and back down the other side. Oops. And you just keep going all the way down. So depending on what sort of threads you decide to use will depend on how chunky this is or how raised up it is, but you can really go to town. So you could mix your threads, so I could carry on doing that one in that finer thread. This is one of my sheepies threads, but I could then find a thicker one and do that alongside it. You could just do little sections, little bars, little parallel bars, and just do some tiny little bits. They could overlap. You could play around with the tension. But I do think this is quite a nice little stitch. Oops. quite nice. Push it all to one side. You could leave it like your little ribs down there. You could even maybe put some French knots down that side. Decorate it however you fancy. Oops. Be careful not to pull it too tight. But just be nice just playing around just with different coloured threads, maybe different weights of thread. So this would be quite nice actually if you did your little bars that I've done in a pearly. If you did those, say with like a tapestry wool or something that's a little bit thicker, even a 6-stranded DMC. Oops, up first, Anne. If your little bars maybe closer together and slightly thinner. So again, as always, have a bit of a play. I'm assuming some of you will be super inventive and there'll probably end up being pictures with this in it. I do love to see how people do interpret them, because it is just a prompt. I've just suddenly thought now I should just be using the wrong side of my needle. If you use the eye of your needle, there we go. I would imagine some of you have been yelling that at me. Twist my needle so it twists itself out. There we go. I would imagine some of you were shouting at me, and just use the other side of your needle. It'll make your life so much easier. And it does. Oh, ridiculous. Oops, she says that now. There we go. Yep, so always remember to bring your thread up first, and then you go underneath and underneath your loop. Take your thread up the bar and then down the bar. Oops, and over your thread. So I might have a bit of a play with a few different types of threads, just to give you some different examples of what it could look like just doing exactly the same stitch. And I'll do my usual where I post it, post some pictures after the video, just so that you've got a reference point. I wish I'd done it like this for it to start off with. That would have been so much easier. So the last one, you go up, come down, and then once you've got your loop, just take your thread through to the back and finish off. So that's this week's flag. I thought it'd just be quite nice just to do a stitch. I know a few people have mentioned about wanting to do a stitch. Well, for those people, here you go. Hopefully that's floated your boat a little bit. Let's pop that up there. So it's a raised chain stitch, but I'll try and get some close-up photos so that you can see the actual stitches, and I'll carry on doing some other little bits and pieces on there. So happy stitching, week 42, very, very exciting. I will see you week 43. Love and hugs. Mwah.